NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.
Information is power. Everyone wants power.
African maritime administrators meet to form a common front to facilitate maritime trade.
IMF team of experts say an improved tax system and buffer remains critical for the attainment of Nigeria's economic growth recovery plan.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we will be focusing on mental health in Nigeria. It is difficult.
All right, so let's begin this way. A conservative estimate by health experts show that in Nigeria, 1 out of 7 persons will have serious mental illness, while 1 in 4 persons will have some form of mental disorder. However, a research by the World Health Organization reveals that 1% of Nigeria's population, that's about 14 million Nigerians, suffer from ailments in many forms, especially from mental illness. Some of them could be acute and some could be chronic.
Well, Rhoda, when we talk about mental health, it cuts across, in the U.S., it's classified along 9 lines. And we know that mental disorder, also called mental illness, psychological disorder or psychiatric disorder, is mental or behavioral pattern that causes either suffering or poor ability to function in ordinary life. And these causes of mental disorder, experts say, are often unclear, but common causes include drug abuse, depression, dementia, schizophrenia, as well as stigma and discrimination.
Well, mental health is reported to be one of the major contributors to disease burden globally. It is the 6th largest burden worldwide and is much more burdensome than even HIV. While there are no specific causes of some mental illnesses, some might be hereditary and some could be due to stress and, of course, lifestyle.
You know, when we talk about Nigeria's mental health policy was first formulated in 1991. Its components include advocacy, promotion, prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation. But however, a good number of about 20 million Nigerians who suffer from mental illness go without professional assistance. And the answer can be found in the World Health Organization estimates that only about 3% of government's budget on health goes to mental health, with over 90% of it going to mental hospitals.
And in 2013 also, need I also remind you that the bill to establish a mental health act was also introduced to the Senate. The bill, of course, protects the rights of persons with mental disorder, ensure equal access to treatment and care, discourages stigma, discrimination, of course, set a standard for psychiatric practice in Nigeria. And of course, if you also look at it, it makes provision for access to mental healthcare and services, voluntary, involuntary treatments, and so on and so forth. And so if you look at it, the mechanism to oversee involuntary admission and to implement the provision of mental health legislation, but yet this law is still yet to be passed.
Oh, well, talking about laws being passed and all that, medical experts are worried that non-passage of the bill has created avenues for dehumanization and extortion of mentally challenged in the country, and that Nigerians still see mental health as a taboo. Also, when we talk about that, 80% of Nigerians with mental health problems do not have access to treatment. And mental health experts have also raised an alarm over increased cases of mental disorder in Nigeria and have called for adequate facilities and personnel to curb it.
Well, Cliff, when we're talking mental health here, a lot of times, a lot of people tend to, confuse it with, people who are like, already on the streets, people who are already in a psychiatric home. But when we talk about mental health here, we're looking at even people who, go to work daily, people who have a livelihood, but, are not mentally fit. They're not able to cope with the stress of work. They're not able to sleep. Some of them are just restless, and it affects every other aspects of their lives.
Just like we talk about when you walk on the street, you drive on the street, you see people that have some problem, mentally.
Yeah.
Not obeying traffic lights, not, doing the right thing at the right time. As a result of stress, a lot of factors.
From work, a lot of mental, some of them could be clinical, issues. Well, that's what we're looking at this morning on Good Morning Nigeria, and we hope that with the guests that we have this morning, we'll be able to prefer some solutions to some of these issues. It's Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Rhoda Alba, and of course, it's good to have you join us. It's the last for the week. It's a Friday morning.
Well, it's a weekend and time for people to reflect on their personal conduct and see if they fall into this category by the time we start discussing it, as to realign yourself to the right way of behavior, of conduct, and relation with others. But I am Cliff Ayoze, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this special program, Good Morning Nigeria. And remember, we have our other segments, newspaper review, we have business, we have foreign, we have arts and entertainment. But before we progress, let's get an update on what is happening from our newsroom with Joseph Johnson. Joseph Johnson, when we talk about mental illness in Nigeria, what picture comes to your mind?
Picture that comes to my mind, Cliff, very, very gloomy, very worrisome situation in Nigeria. But I'm glad the topic for today on Good Morning Nigeria should address some of those issues. All right. So thanks for joining us on the news desk at this time. I'm Joseph Johnson. President Muhammadu Buhari has challenged the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development to redouble efforts at revitalizing the nation's mining industry for enhanced growth and development of the economy. In a meeting with the minister, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, the president expressed delight over the approval of $150 million by the World Bank in support of the mining sector, which he described as a major breakthrough in the government's drive towards relaunching the promising economic sector.
Part of this money is going to assist with geological data. It's also going to contribute to our organizing the informal sector into a formal sector, provide them some access to funding, and also help them with technological equipment for the artisanal miners. It is also going to help us. There are many miners that have done extensive exploration, but to move to production has been a challenge. So for those who are crossing over from exploration to exploitation and to actual mining, we believe that giving them a leg up, some assistance would help boost the industry.
Meanwhile, the ongoing efforts of the federal government to improve fiscal policies geared towards reviving the strength of the economy has been described as a positive step by the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Answering questions on the fiscal monitor, IMF's team of experts say an improved tax system and buffers remain critical for the attainment of Nigeria's economic growth recovery plan.
to tax revenue has doubled to 66% in Nigeria. So a full 2/3 of all tax revenue then now is going to pay for interest payments, illustrating then both the debt risks and the need to raise tax revenue.
Forming a common front by African countries to facilitate maritime trade is key to achieving regional economic prosperity, which is the dream of the founding fathers of African Union. Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, on behalf of President Muhammadu Buhari, said these are the third Association of African Maritime Administrators annual conference in Abuja.
The measures that we're putting in place are designed to improve the efficiency of our ports and to enable quick turnaround time of vessels. Technology is also being deployed to make our port operations more transparent and effective in support of economic growth.
We must intensify efforts to promote intra-African trade in fisheries. Statistics also show that pan-African fish trade is worth about 20 billion euros.
Regrettable that despite Africa's enormous maritime endowment, we remain susceptible to a raft of challenges. These include insignificant share of cargo, low tonnage, piracy, sea robbery, undeclared and unregulated fishing, and environmental degradation.
In the meantime, the federal government has mapped out strategies to reduce the stress and inconveniences being faced by applicants seeking international passport. Minister of Interior Abdurrahman Dambazao stated this while inaugurating a second passport office in Kano.
We hope to commission 24 additional passport offices so that Nigerians would have the services they desire.
Still from Kano, Senate leader Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan says support for President Muhammadu Buhari is a support for ideology for good governance and nation building. This was at the Northwest Zonal meeting of the National Committee for Buhari Support Group in Kano.
This year's budget seems the highest allocation release, funds releases for capital projects, the highest so far, since the inception of civilian administration, over 1 trillion naira.
So there is always a need to use the support groups that canvass for election to go back to the grassroots and tell the grassroots the government is for them.
Mr. President believes that the most downtrodden masses of Nigeria should be given their dues. That's why he fights corruption, because corruption eats away and sucks away everything.
Now, let's take you to Nasarawa State, where appropriate implementation strategies are being revolved to reinvigorate disaster reduction response in Nigeria. At a validation workshop in Nasarawa State organized by the National Emergency Management Agency, input of relevant stakeholders are being collated so as to come up with workable strategies.
I think we should find a way of putting the idea of getting a legislation that is going to enhance interagency collaboration, cooperation.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed says African ministers of culture and tourism will rally support to have an African succeed the current United Nations World Tourism Organization Secretary General Taleb Rifai, whose tenure will come to an end this year. Nigeria's minister is amongst the top advocates for the move.
We all believe that it's the turn of Africa to occupy this post. Of course, a lot of intensive lobbying is going on, But what I think is most important is for us to ensure that we in Africa, we do not lose the opportunity to produce the next United Nations Secretary General. For us, who are ministers from Africa, would want to ensure that an African emerges as the next Secretary General.
So talking tourism, the dearth of information and proper packaging of Africa's tourism potential has been identified as the bane of the sector's growth and development on the continent. Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Taleb Rifai, disclosed these at a high-level meeting of the ongoing 59th UNWTO CAF meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The high point of the meeting is to finding road for Chinese tourists to Africa.
A baggage to carry from its history of its relationship with Africa. And that's giving it an advantage and an edge. I completely believe that now is the turn for Africa to seek Chinese assistance and support in this very crucial area of tourism.
We should create successive forums like this till we reach the point where we can say we have created concrete understanding, and to the point that the Chinese tourists could have better understanding about the wonders of our continent.
The Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Yakubu Ibn Muhammad, says the NTA will continue to support all efforts aimed at curbing criminal activities in the country. Yakubu Ibn Muhammad said this when the Implementation Committee to curtail cattle rustling in Nigeria paid him a courtesy visit at the NTA headquarters in Abuja.
One of the critical objectives of this administration is to ensure that the whole of Nigeria is safe. The whole of Nigeria is safe not only for the citizens of this country, but also for investors and other visitors who find Nigeria attractive.
The committee is also mandated to organize sensitization and advocacy visits to major stakeholders, government agencies, and interest groups to solicit for their cooperation and buy-in as a way of not only initiating the process of ending the menace of cattle rustling, but also making the efforts and success recorded in that regard sustainable.
And finally, President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of Abubakar Abba Bello as the Managing Director of the Nigerian Export-Import Bank, NEXIM. Also appointed are Dr. Bala Mohammed Bello as Executive Director, Corporate Services, and Stella Okotete as Executive Director, Business Development. A statement by the Director Press Office of the SGF, Bolaji Adebi, states that the appointments take immediate effect. And that's it on the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues with Rhoda and Cleve after the break. Stay with us.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Winning in hot and dry conditions is hard. Causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another. What keeps you so cool, man? Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
reputation of the school. It is a place of excellence. The school is having more than 4,000 students.
This place was formerly known as the Den of Robbers, but he transformed it into a beautiful structure that I am proud to say that I'm a student of a City School. Because I mean, look at, we have laboratories that we can stay and learn more in the area of science. We have the school library. We have even the computer lab.
This is the new Imo State, where education is free. The Imo Rescue Mission. Imo must be better.
Introducing the new 5 Alive Pulpy Orange.
Where is the pulp? The pulp. Where is the pulp? Where is the pulp?
Taste the goodness of real orange pulp in every gulp.
Where is the pulp?
The new 5 Alive Pulpy Orange, now in your neighborhood.
Welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA. And it's time now for us to take a look at some of the dailies we have with us this morning.
Well, it's now time to look at what is trending on Nigerian dailies today, and we'll have our regular reviewer, Bayo Atoyobi. It's our pleasure.
Thank you. Good morning, Cliff. Good morning, Rhoda. Good morning, Nigeria.
A lot on the papers today, Rhoda, and I know that we'll take off now with New Telegraph. On New Telegraph this morning, we have on the front page, FG arraigns Supreme Court Justice for selling rice, palm oil. And Justice Nguta faces fresh trial at CCT. Oshibajo's panel meet on suspended SGF, NIA DG, and PDP demands independent commission of inquiry. Also on the front page of New Telegraph this morning, we have tears as Lagos demolishes 600 shops, stalls in Lagos, with details of that on page 8. And on top of the nameplate of New Telegraph this morning, we have heard FG gives Saudi airline 45% stake, and NACOM justifies concession experts kick. And other promotional items on the front page of New Telegraph, we have Buhari approves new security architecture for waterways, with details on page 4. And 2019, INEC declares delay in budget passage, with details of that report on page 4. And Rivers declares notorious cultist Supremo wanted, with details on page 34 of New Telegraph this morning. And of course, the last on the front page of New Telegraph is Naira rebounds to 383 to a dollar as CBN boosts dollar sell, with details of that report on page 30 of New Telegraph.
All right, the Daily Trust is next, and on the Daily Trust, let's begin below the nameplates. It says security operatives raid Goje's Abuja residence. That's security operatives raid Goje's Abuja residence. And now to the big story on the Daily Trust this morning. NIA's 15 billion naira, says ex-director. NIA's 15 billion naira approved by Jonathan for 2015 campaign. A statement then credited to ex-director with the rider. It came from NNPC's account source. It came from NNPC's account. Now let's quickly move to the foot of the paper there. You'd see federal government docks Justice Nguta over asset declaration. On page 6, 23-year-old man commits suicide. And finally on page 10, FAN NCAA NAMA REA, that's REA, gets new heads of, I think heads of boards.
Yeah, heads of boards.
Yeah,
yes.
and executive directors.
It is, yes.
Yes.
Well, still moving on, let's get your view on
Yes,
what is trending here.
Yes, thank you. The trend certainly is about the money involving the National Intelligence Agency, and the Punch put it this way. It says that it suggested that the suspended Director General of the National Agency had admitted that the agency actually received $289,202,382 in a presidential order in February 2015. The Vice President-led committee has directed that the Director General, who is on suspension, should provide document to support this. It was part of the intervention fund that was allegedly meant for special services. It is the agency's demand memo to the National Petroleum Investment Management Services, NAPIMS, and that is why the Daily Trust is referring to the NNPC. It was said that NAPIMS memo in February 2015 asked for the funds to be released by the Central Bank of Nigeria. There's also the report that has been, Rhoda, you reported about Danjuma Gode's residence raided, where security men numbering about 40 raided the home of Senator Danjuma Gode. This was, Daily Trust says that in the process, sums of about 80 million naira, $19,000, and 4,000 real were discovered. While this was going on, the senator, who is chairman of Senate Committee on Appropriation, was busy putting finishing touches the 2019 budget. However, the EFCC has denied that it is not true that it was involved in the raid of the residence of the senator, Senate chairman on appropriation. So you have this conflicting report. But on the war against corruption side, the Nigerian police have also invited the general public to blow whistle on us if you found any instances of corruption or misconduct on personnel. Towards this, they've opened several platforms on WhatsApp, Instagram, GSM, and they said, please do the whistle blowing on us if you find any officer indulged in corruption. So you see, the war against corruption is permeating all agencies.
Of course, yes. The high and mighty have been caught off guard, you know, with the discovery and recovery of large sums of money at very sensitive places. You know, when you talk about going to a place where the NIA operates and you recover such large sums of money, that shows that the anti-corruption war is really catching up, and the various agencies are taking the right steps to discover this, and the whistleblower appears to be paying off, isn't it?
Yes, the whistleblowing is certainly yielding positive dividends. But there's also another development. Currency traders, particularly in the Bureau de Change, are now advocating that these huge sums of foreign currencies should be plowed back into the currency market so that it will enhance the value of the naira. That is their own perspective as far as that is concerned. If scarcity of dollars is leading to the depreciation of naira, those discovery dollars should be able to enhance
until the court
dollars.
permits that, you know, we can't really talk about that. We also had the FG arraign Supreme Court justice for selling rice, palm oil.
That to me is a little bit confusing. Why?
Is it from the headline or something like that?
But the subject itself. In the past, public officers, which a judge of this court is, were allowed to carry out activities in farming to enhance their boosting. This permeated the era of Operation Feed the Nation and Operation Green Revolution. And public officers, public servants, whether judges in the legislature, in the executive, or whatever, were allowed to carry out farming activities and also benefit from the proceeds. But now it is an offense that the judge will have to explain.
Would you want to talk about on the naira rebounding again to 381 to $1?
Yes, I have the statistics here. From the parallel market, the naira is about 385, the pound is 495, and the euro is 410. At the Bureau de Change, it is about 362 to the dollar, 490, and in fact, at the euro, the BDC, the rate is in fact higher than the parallel market. And this is why I said currency speculators were saying that, look, all these recovery things should be plowed back to enhance the value of the naira. But then they forget that these are exhibits that are supposed to be presented in court.
Brother, I know you have the next paper.
All right, let's quickly take a look at the Vanguard. The Vanguard newspaper is next. And on the Vanguard, let's take a look at the big story on the Vanguard, if we have that. The Vanguard leads with NIA cash, Oshibajo meets Magu, DSS boss, IG, and others. That's the lead story on the Vanguard this morning. And also too, if you go down you'd see that Boko Haram terrorists kill 11 soldiers in Borno attacks. That's on the Vanguard this morning, and of course a couple of other stories trending on the Vanguard this morning. All right, Cliff.
Yeah, we're talking about the Boko Haram terrorists, being claimed. But let's look at what the authority is talking about this morning. On the front page, we have war against corruption. FG begins probe of Lawal. Are you okay? And Oshimbajo meets IGP, DSS boss, others. And of course, the picture story there, we have the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo unveiling the NIMASA logo in Abuja, while the Speaker House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, the Minister of Transportation, Honorable Rotimi Amechi, and the Director General of NIMASA, Dr. Dakuku Peterside, looking on there. But we have another story. Customs Service redeploys 48 controllers in major shakeout. This is good news there. And on top of the nameplate of the authority this morning, we have police arrest wanted Boko Haram leader in Bauchi, and APC crisis deepens. Governor Shan meeting with NWC. That's on page 4 of the authority. What would you look at? We have the arrest of the kingpin of Boko Haram, and we also have the vice president, the probe, still making progress.
We already talked about the probe, but talking about Boko Haram, it's very sad that on 2 occasions now, Boko Haram have attacked soldiers at checkpoints, and unfortunately this time around, I think the casualty figure is about, we lost about 14 soldiers. But this is from an arm of the Boko Haram that belongs to what they call Al-Banawi arm. The other sad story, however, is what happened in Calabar yesterday. While fans gathered at a viewing center watching the football match, European Cup match, an electricity wire was said to have snapped and fallen on the viewing center. Unfortunately, 30 football fans are feared dead in Calabar. This is something that has to be taken very seriously, because there have been instances reported in Bauchi when fans gather to watch some of these European Cup matches. At the end of the day, they end up fighting, some of them using knives on one another. It's good to watch football, but unfortunately, it's becoming a very source of tragedy because of the passion that people carry to these games.
Okay, would you want to look at the redeployment of 48 controllers and how it will impact positively on the mandate of Nigerian Customs Service?
Well, the Nigerian Customs the other day, for instance, put a statement out that when people steal or when people are robbers, nobody goes to plead for them. But when people smuggle and they arrest them, people come pleading that they should please help, because there is this perception among Nigerians that smuggling itself is a business. It's not uncommon to find a Nigerian introducing himself that I'm a smuggler. He doesn't know that that actually is a crime. He thinks it's a way of life and it's a business. And so to clean up the acts of the custom, of recent, they have been challenged by members of the public that if items find themselves into the market that are not supposed to be, it means the custom is at fault because they couldn't stop them at entry points. And therefore the custom is trying to clear his own house to make sure that those who are collaborators to violating illegal products getting into the Nigerian market are tackled. And this is part of the reorganization going on.
All right, Bayo, let's quickly take a look at the Punch newspaper. And on the Punch, we'll just quickly take a look at the lead story on the Punch. That's the story that you just talked about now. It says 30 football fans fell dead in Calabar viewing center tragedy. 30 football fans fell dead in Calabar viewing center tragedy, and victims electrocuted while watching the Manchester United match yesterday also too. And there's another story there. If you go down, it says police failed to release detained leadership reporter, and also Abuja civil servant. Okay, that's quite an interesting one. Abuja civil servant give birth to quadruplets. Family asks for support. There's a story of a young couple, you know, who just got married, and they have a set of quadruplets at the National Hospital. That's quite a lot for them.
Yes, that's a wonderful blessing, but they have come so much and too strong, too high, and too demanding for the poor couple. And so they are appealing to Nigerians for support. And Nigerians are very wonderful. Yeah. You'll be surprised they will come to their aid. However, let me quickly draw attention to what happened in Osun State. Since Governor Rauf Aregbesola was sworn in on 27th of November 2014, do you know that he's been ruling without commissioners? He has just sent a list of 39 commissioners and special advisors to the Osun State House of Assembly. I see an irony in it. If I'm to take liberty of his surname, which says Aregbesola, which literally translates as somebody who enjoys ruling in a group, he has been ruling.
Well,
it
has worked for him. You know. On that note, Bayo, I would like to say a special thanks to you for finding time again to be part of this show this morning. And I know that you'll be here on Monday. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria, where discussion will center on mental health in Nigeria in a moment.
Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh Geruola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with
feet are stomping, and the gym is pumping. Look at the crowd is jumping. Pump up your jam and push up your hand. You know, say me fans them plenty like sun. Jump up and dance, make them understand. Say me energy could I never be contraband. No matter what life throws at me, I can handle it constantly. All of my fans them invited. DJ, make my day.
make my day. Make my day. Make my day.
We appreciate the gesture, we appreciate her love, and we know that she cares about the people of Nigeria.
She wants to touch people's life, especially the less privileged, or even people who are sick in the hospital. We remember that they have a wife of the president who is very concerned about human life and humanity in general.
Nigeria and the NTA. Our focus this morning is on mental health. Mental health is a central component of a total wellness. However, in many developing countries, like, of course, Nigeria, attention for the expansion of mental health institutions are yet to be fully developed to cater for mental health cases. In this background report, put together by Timothy Yusuf, of course, he sets a foundation for our discussion this morning, and that's on mental health.
Mental health problem has impacts on socio-economic development of nations and on the individual's quality of life. For instance, the World Health Organization indicated that about 4 out of 6 people suffers from some form of psychiatric illnesses. Other research findings also indicated that mental health problem cost the global economy approximately $44 billion per year. Experts say mental illness covers 14% to the global burden of disease worldwide, just as the World Health Organization reported that 154 million people globally suffered from depression, 91 million people from alcohol use disorders, and 15 million from drug use disorders. Around 25% of individuals in both developed and developing countries develop one or more mental or behavioral disorders at some stage in their life. The impact of mental illness does not favor color, race or ethnicity, social status and educational level of individuals. Consequently, even a relatively mild mental health problem can cause social, emotional or cognitive changes that in turn disrupt the whole social and vocational achievements that have major effect on the individual's entire life journey. Those who know explained that most people in Nigeria believe that mental illness is the result of afflictions caused by supernatural forces, and due to these perceived causes for the illness, the traditional medical practitioners and religious healers are the sole individuals to help the patients getting relief from the illness. Many people tend to hide their maladaptive behaviors, emotional illnesses, or psychological distress that requires modern mental health treatments. So, what are the likely causes of mental illness? What can be done to tackle the menace? Are people actually aware of mental health? These and more questions we will be posing to our guest shortly.
Well, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and of course that background report sets the tone for our conversation as we focus on contemporary mental health challenges in Nigeria. And we're being joined in the studio by no less a person than Hamza Umar. Hamza Umar is the Commander, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLA, in Kano State. And it's our pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you.
Also, we have Hawa Abbas Hadija. She's here with us in the studio. She is the founder of Silver Lining Initiative. It's our pleasure to have you join us.
Good morning.
And also we're being joined on the discussion this morning by Aisha Aliyu Tafida. She is the founder, project coordinator, Parents Against Drug Abuse Initiative, PADA, in partnership with the UNODC-CIN, the Community Intervention Network on Drugs. Aisha Tafida, you're welcome.
Good morning.
And also finally from our Just Network Center, joining us in this discussion this morning is Samuel Adekunle Jinadu. He's a clinical psychologist. Samuel Adekunle Jinadu, you're welcome to the program.
Okay, we start this now, and I think we'd like to go straight to Hamza, because we're talking about contemporary mental health challenges in Nigeria. WHO statistics indicate that about 40 million Nigerians have question mark when it comes to mental health. Let's get your perspective, you know, being in charge of that and interacting, trying to curb that very challenge. So I think first, let's start with Hawa. I think Hawa, you want to come in here because you're already doing a lot of work in that.
Yes, sir.
It's okay.
Well, we've been doing a lot of work in surrounding mental health, but more focused on the young people and youth. So that's the age bracket between 12 and about 24 years old. And we decided to focus on this area because we feel that if you can get a young person, a young child, and a youth mentally stable, it would reduce the effects of adulthood complications, you know, well, a more progressive mental health issue. If someone is able to learn how to manage stress, learn how to manage just the life in general, it will be easier for us to be able to reduce the burden that we're facing right now.
I think Umar should come in here.
Yeah. You see, I'm happy you involved Banjo over and just as a psychologist in this. But really, the issue of mental health is a very serious issue in this country. And as has been said in the earlier stage, a lot of reasons are deduced to it. And when we talk of mental illness, I won't say I'm not confident because as a narcotic officer, I come across a lot of things that are related to that. Number one, popularly Nigerians look at the issue of mental health, some as natural, some they see it as supernatural. Some also agree that majority, if I may put it, 70% are caused by abuse in terms of drugs. And it cut across all age. If you look at drug abuse these days, it started right from the age of 8. So if you go to also the asylums, most of the psychiatrics, you see this age range from 8 to 60, 70, if you call it. And if you look at the books, the files before admission, you find out that in one way or the other, as I was stated, it has influence with drugs. Some even as parents, they used to take some of these patients to psychiatry with the idea that they are either caused by genes, even or somebody from the society is progressing, they are causing, but eventually when they started diagnosis, you discover that it's the issue of drugs. So I know a psychologist will talk confidently on that, but I can tell you confidently that drug abuse contributes more than 70, or you can even call it 80, to this issue of mental illness that we have presently in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Amza Umar. But then I'd like to go to our psychologist in Jos, and that's Samuel Jinadu. You are a psychologist. I'd like you to begin by, first of all, giving us an understanding of what, you know, we're just talking about mental health disorder. At what point would you say somebody is mentally fit? At what point would you draw the line and say this person is not has a mental disorder? And what are the mental disorders that affect most Nigerians?
Thank you so much. Mental illness is a very broad area. Of course, there are
All right, Samuel Jinadu, we're still trying to establish a very clear audio connection with you from our Just Network Center. As soon as we do that, we'll get back to you. But then let's continue with our guests here in the studio. I'd like Hawa Abbas Adeja to actually come in here. I know you're not a psychologist, but of course you've had a first-hand with your initiative, with you've had first-hand experience with working with people who have mental disorders. What are the most common, mental disorders that you actually encounter?
Well, the most common we'll say is depression, and that's even just at the starting level before it even gets into, schizophrenia and a more complicated issue. But depression is one common mental illness that many Nigerians are actually facing, and they are not even aware of it. And this is, again, to do with management of stress and just the stress management of life, basically. There are various reasons why people get depressed. It could be financial, it could be emotional, different reasons. As Mr. Hamza has said, drug abuse is obviously connected. Obviously, if a person is not mentally stable, they will look for substances to lift their spirits, and usually people go to substance abuse. Another thing that actually we found in terms of people that have mental illness is actually sexual abuse as well. Those who were sexually abused at a young age, even when they were not cancelled, or they were not, they had no one to talk to. Now later on in life, they probably repressed it at a young age, but now it's resurfacing and it's beginning to disturb them. So these are some of the reasons that we found, like in terms of the people that we've been working with, both young and old. It starts with depression. Depression is actually the starting point.
Well, thank you, Howard. We would like to bring in Aksha Ali Dafida, who is the founder and project coordinator Parents Against Drug Abuse Initiative. We know that you've done a lot in this area. Can you give us your perspective when we talk about mental illness, in Nigeria?
Okay, we all know that mental illness is an emotional thing, as she said, emotionally lead to depression, and then depression. And then as he mentioned about drug and the way we approach mental illness and drug issues contributes a lot to mental illness also, because an example of the NTA people, when you find people having drugs or taking drugs in an area, you arrest them, right? And then the recent investigation we did was that they don't have proper care at the NTA custody. They arrest them, keep them for about 3 months, and then bring them out, maybe probably a few counselors, and then come out and then get back to the same issue.
All right, Aisha Tafida, we're having a technical issue there with your audio, but then we'll get back to you shortly. But then let's get to Samuel Jinadu, who's a psychologist who is in Jos. If you can actually hear me very well now. Actually, I was saying earlier, you're a psychologist. I'd like us to actually, first of all, start by distinguishing when we talk about mental health, what mental health, a good mental health, and then at what point can we say that, okay, there's a mental health disorder, and then also to what are the most common, mental health disorders that a lot of Nigerians, go through?
Mental health disorder, first of all, comes with a lot of dysfunctionality. An individual who is mentally stable would be expected to be able to carry out his daily functioning. He would be expected to be able to interact, carry out his responsibility, go to school, go to work, perform social responsibility very well. But if an individual is not able to do all this, carry out his responsibility on account of a challenge, then you may want to investigate what the problems may be. Like I said, mental health issues, or the definition of mental health is quite relative, because you look at, is this person's behavior grossly moving away from an average person's behavior in the society? All right. So if an individual if an individual behavior is causing distress for him, maybe the person is depressed and is not happy, is not going to work, and the bills are piling up, the person may be experiencing some certain form of distress. That may be one of the category or one of the ways to look at mental health. Again, it's distress to others. If the person's behavior is constituting distress to other people, most of the time that is what we see in the society as maybe mental illness, because individuals who have mental illness, to a large extent, don't even know that they have a challenge. Somebody may be depressed and not even know, just like Hawa said. And somebody may be even using substance and still be rationalizing the substance use. So, but if the people around him are complaining, maybe somebody enters the house, everything start getting missing, the phone get missed, the laptop, because the person is using them to go and buy substance, then the people around him would notice, they would be distressed about that behavior. So what the people around him sees as distress, is also one of those things we look at in definition of mental illness. So mental illness is quite broad. One of the, and it's very, very underreported, very, very underreported. The cases of depression, most people don't even report depression because the society stigmatizes people with mental illness, They see it as weakness of character, they see it as weakness of strength, or maybe you are spiritually possessed. So people don't usually report it. They just want to handle it and then maybe hoping that it will pass. But unfortunately, it gets chronic. It start eating very deep, and before treatment starts or the commencement of treatment, the situation has gone really very bad. So again, one of the things that I want to say is the pathway to care. Most people don't report mental health issues, so they don't really get care. They don't really get the attention they need. Because if an individual has mental health condition and he's able to report it on time or is able to seek medical care, then the probability of the person functioning or recovering from that situation is very high. But if the individuals perceive it as spiritual problem and then goes to spiritual healers and other unorthodox treatment modalities, then you discover that the mental illness will keep, still be there, and the person would still not get better, but the situation will be getting chronic. So before they now get to the clinician, it's very, very difficult for the clinicians to do a very good job. So it's quite a very complex, In the cases of substance use, it's very, very on the increase. We now get people before now, you see people of an average person that starts using substances probably at the teenage age, maybe between 13 to 19, because that is the period where they are facing identity conflict. They want to have their own identity. They want to, move away from the parent and be their own self, hang out with their friends and all that. But now we now have people, individuals at the age of 9, 10 using substance, and that is very dangerous, because at that age their personality is not well formed. So when an individual's personality is not well formed and is being formed with the influence of substance, then it's quite dangerous, because the individuals will be stuck at some certain point, will not be able to achieve life goals, will not be able to be very productive in the society. And like the introductory reports say, mental health has very huge burden of care. In other words, it puts a whole lot of holes in the pocket of the caregivers. So people who care for people with mental illness, it's not like they would die immediately of mental illness. Of course, we have cases of suicide because of depression, but the rate is not that high compared to other medical conditions. But it's throw the family and the individuals into poverty. If the person is working, the person becomes very redundant, not being able to carry out daily activities. And one other thing again is, the cost of not getting care is even much more higher than the cost of mental illness on its own. So if an individual is having mental illness and is not getting care, the cost that the individual will incur is much more higher than the cost of not getting treatment. So it's a very dynamic issue. And one thing I think we need to do is to raise awareness and destigmatize mental illness, because the truth is, if I'm going to be sacked from office because I say I have depression, then I wouldn't want to say I have depression. I'll give you an instance. How many HMOs, how many health maintenance organizations we have that have mental illness as one of the services they render to their clientele organizations? It's very low. There is, in fact, if we even have at all, there's no HMO that I've seen that have mental health care for the organizations they provide services for. That tells you that the awareness is very low, and people will not want to associate with this. Because other countries, you see somebody will tell you that I have depression, I'm going to see my clinicians, and it's seen as somebody who have malaria. But in Nigeria, it's quite different. If you made mention of something like that, the next thing that comes to mind is that this person is either possessed, this person is not, there is something wrong with this person and he needs deliverance. So people don't want to be associated with that. So they wouldn't even want to raise a voice about their mental state. So, and it's quite important, because mental state have significant interference with our ability to carry out our daily responsibilities.
Samuel, Rhoda, let me come in here. Samuel, still with you, because we're talking about, you've just touched on a whole lot of issues, and the lack of care, and of course the stigma that is associated with it. But some people have this perception that it could be hereditary or come from other specific things. Would you want to talk along that line? Because I know in other climes there are classifications of mental health or mental challenges, as the case may be. Would you want to enlighten us in that direction?
The etiological model we use for mental health, both in terms of understanding the cause and then trying to treat, is we use the biopsychosocial model. The biopsychosocial model looks at the biological factors, it looks at the psychological factors, and then it looks at the sociological factors. And in the biological factors, yes, you can have things like genetic loading. So if an individual have maybe parent or relative that have mental health challenges, it predisposes the person to having mental health. It's not a cause on its own, it's a predisposition. In other words, the person have high likelihood, and that does not mean the person would have mental health. But if the person continues to throw himself under stressful situation, under undue frustration, under high expectation, and all those psychological factors, the probability of the person coming down with mental health is quite high. So there is genetic loading, and it has a lot of role to play. But like I say, it's not a causative factor. So the fact that my parents, for instance, have mental illness does not mean I have mental illness. It only tells you that there's a predisposition. So on my own part, I would need to be very careful with what I do. Something like maybe diabetes. You know, if there is a family history of the diabetic condition, the younger ones will want to watch what they eat, want to, you know, be very careful and more sensitive to their health condition. And that does not mean they would have, or that does not mean they have, but it's just a precautionary measure they need to take. So, of course, there is genetic loading, and like I say, it is all-encompassing, both genetics, both psychological, and both sociological condition. All these factors, they play the kind of interwoven variables that determine an individual that would, you know, come down with mental health condition.
That's Samuel Jinadu. I'd like to still stay with you just a little bit. If some of the things that you have highlighted now, because a lot of times when we talk about mental health, it's already when it has gone beyond a certain stage. I'd like us to look at it before it even graduates to the use of drugs. If you're saying anxiety, personality disorder, sleep disorder, and of course mood disorder, if all of these are part of, you know, a mental health that is, you know, that is already in disorder, how would you now describe the state of mental health in Nigeria? Because this is something that a lot of people suffer.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things that people tend to say Nigerians are very resilient, you know, but I see it as, is it actually being resilient, or is Nigerians not really opening up to their true state of mental health condition? You know, yes, there are a lot of all these factors that could come in. An individual who is mentally sound, who is mentally stable, would be able to carry out his daily function. So if, for instance, you have family members who know you, who understand you, who you've grown up with, and they all of a sudden start seeing some deviations, you know, they start seeing some certain behavioral tendencies that are not your kind of person, they will want to raise an eyebrow. And, you know, such kind of individuals would be like a mirror to other people who have mental health condition. In Nigeria, yes, the cases of mental health is quite high. And like I say, it is underreported. It is only when, for instance, somebody commits suicide that would know that this person is depressed or was battling depression. So it's like a post assessment that we are doing. You know, when the situation has become chronic, that's where we now get to understand that this person is having so kind of challenge. But I would want to encourage the general populace that they should try to seek mental health assessment. It's not a bad thing for you to know your mental state of mind, for you to know your psychological state. It's not a bad thing. It's not a crime. It's not an allegation or an indictment that, you know, you go to check your mental state. Just like you go to the hospital and do your general, what is it called? You go to do your general assessment. You can go to the hospital, and then if you notice maybe there are certain conditions you're not comfortable, you find it very difficult to sleep. You wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep, and this has been going on for a while, or you lack appetite, or you just notice that things are not, you are overwhelmed by responsibilities or by emotions or by situations around you, you can seek mental health condition without allowing it to degenerate to a level where it will now be, you know, in and out of hospital. But the earlier intervention is sought, the better for care. Nigerians have a very huge population with mental health condition, albeit it is underreported.
Thank you very much, Samuel Jinadu. It's really important to know that at some point you might just you know, the way you go and say, let me check if I have malaria. And just recently, you know, talking about awareness, Prince Harry came out to say that that's why mental health issue is something that is trending. Lately, he came out to say that I was depressed at some point after losing my mom at the age of 12, and you know, he said I've had to talk to, you know, a psychiatrist. And he was asked how many times. He said several times I had to, you know, talk to someone. What is it with the issue of people, you know, suffering these disorder and not wanting to talk about it? Let's look at it, Aisha. Why is it that people don't want to, especially in this part of the world? Of course, stigma is there, but then is it not just a part of our culture that we want to go see a psychiatrist to say, okay, I'm not sleeping well, or I feel like I'm overwhelmed by what I'm going through? Or is it that sometimes some people say even the psychiatrists, there's a shortage?
Yeah, that's true, because the psychiatrists we have here in Nigeria, very few really know how to handle the mental health illness issues, especially when it comes to a stigma. You walk into a hospital and you see someone that knows you. You know, like there is a hospital who I know, they don't even have a name. It's a psychiatric hospital. I worked there for 3 years. They don't even have a name. And it's a locked up from outside. And they don't chain people, they don't lock people. You can walk in on your own and spend 2 days if you are depressed from work or you have a problem, and then your file is confidential. But you know, we have community issue. That stigma is #1 issue.
So you're saying you worked in a hospital where that doesn't have a name? They have a name, but the name is not there.
It's not there.
You can walk in there, talk to them.
It's
Okay.
not my hospital. I worked there before.
Okay.
It's rehab center, and is a psychiatric doctor who owns the hospital.
Okay.
So, and I was shocked, you know, when I started having a voluntary work there, and then I was like seeing a lot of people, very important that I know, but I was trained not to even recognize, not to even outside. If I see any patient in the hospital, if I go outside, I should not even talk to the patient until the patient talks to me, because they know I work there. So, you know, it's not every hospital you work in the community. We are in Abuja here, or Lagos, or Port Harcourt, we have good hospital. Or just when you go to like Gombe, Maiduguri also, you may not have this kind of setup. So
let's have more of your, you know, experience from the parents' perspective, because you're deeply involved in Parents Against Drug Abuse initiative. What has it been like, you know, over time? Because we talked about substance addiction, we talked about personality disorder, we talk about affective disorder, and all these, you know, tend to affect the human being, you know, from acting the right way. Tell us your experience from the parents' perspective.
Parents are in denial.
That's serious. Yeah, that's serious.
It's been very tough to get into them. They want to have a secret, all of them. And then the children, they are educated, they want to talk, they need help. Or maybe a friend from a school said, my brother is doing drugs, and my mother said I should not talk. You know, I come across a girl yesterday, her mother came to visit me. I was shocked when the girl just came to me and said, Auntie, how long do you stay in rehab center? So I was like, the mother said, get into the car, let's go, let's go. So I said, please, I need to have a word with her. She said, he's a friend of mine in school. Her brother is in drugs and this and that. And that's why I said, I need to get into the family. But they refuse to see me. So how long are we going to continue doing this in Nigeria? Hiding our own issues? Because this is a public health issue. It's not about, you know, it's a medical issue. It's not about hiding. And
Omar, it appears you have something to chip in here, because I know more often than not you take steps to rehabilitate them.
Exactly. And they are virtually the same line. Either you're an addict or you have a mental health problem. The basic issue is this stigma. And how do you go away with this stigma? You need to sensitize people, like what you are doing now. I know Nigerians hardly miss Good Morning Nigeria show, and educating people. You see, when you have a problem, mental illness or a drug addiction, and you try to hide it, one, you are not helping the family, you are not helping yourself, and you will also face the same problem, because as a father, when your child is involved, and they decide not to because this man will say that or this. It has been an issue, but I think there are ways out. One, you need to educate the people that mental health mostly is temporal. It's what they call it, like put it, temporary insanity, because there are certain causes. If you observe before, we call the doctor psychologist, Aisha was trying to raise an issue that why I see that they take some people 3 months, it can be in mental health or it can be in NDLA, and when they come back, they are back in the same conditions. Simple. People fail to realize what are those environmental factors that are stated, that generated you being in that condition. Number one, if you are an addict or you have mental problem caused by these drugs, now you are treated by either psychologist or you are rehabilitated by a rehabilitation center, they fail to do one thing. Go back and know that environment that brought you into that condition. Are you going back there? The moment you are treated and you go back there, definitely you'll have what is called relapse. Or two, it occurs from the same family. Because some are not even environmental, some are within the family. Like when a young guy stand up, every day you see daddy hit him when he had the blood, some out of shock. They get some temporary mental insanity. Shock can cause that. So I think what we need to do, first of all, is to tell people that this is sickness, not matter of stigma. These people need help. It's just like someone suffering from diabetics. He's sick. So whether mental illness or drug addiction, these are sick people that need help. People should look at it on that perspective. Instead of saying, some don't, you can't even go to look for marriage, you know. In every part of this world, if they say they have this temperamental side, he's a madman, I won't give you my daughter. Oh no, she has been temperate. I'm telling you this.
Yeah.
So I think the most important thing, and this is not for you and me, the media, yes, we are doing their own, the religious leaders have to do their own, traditional people have to do their own, the NGOs are going to have to do their own. Come out and must say, look, because if you go to most of the psychiatric homes, you find out that yes, most of them, depression, maybe family problem, just social problems. Not many are biological. And if you want that, they will tell you they are supernatural or they are caused by demons or this and that. You find out that in the long run, it's demons. The moment they reach a psychiatric, you find out temporarily they're okay. So I think my own advice, my own take here is people need to be enlightened. People need to be sensitized that this one is something that is temporary. It can be more than. After all, we have seen a lot of cases like that. Later, the people come out to be in very sensitive places. I don't want to mention names because I'm the first through that.
Let's bring in Hawa here because you've been involved. We're talking about parents, the role they play in checking this mental health challenge, possibly when they find one of their wards, suffering that. What is the picture you take away?
Like Hajia said, we find that people don't want to tell themselves the truth, and what we've been doing is we started working in primary schools and secondary schools, because if you're trying to solve issues, it's better to start with the young people before they even any issues are triggered by them. So we start there, and like Mr. Hamza rightly said, you mentioned something, when a child watches their parents hitting the mother and all that, it can lead them to drugs. But also, in terms of even physical abuse, when a child has watched the parent abusing the father abusing the mother, or even just, anyway, now abuse goes both ways. So even the mother abusing the father, they will grow up and that's how they will end up abusing their own partners. And then we will say, oh, that man is a wicked man, or that woman is a wicked, that man is beating his wife. But it's something from childhood that he has watched. So he's accustomed to this kind of behavior. So we need to have like a mental shift, mental change in the way that we are handling young people. The parents who are refusing to accept that, yes, my child is on drugs, or yes, my child is has a mental issue, we need to, well, I'll leave it for Hajia to work on parents, because I'm not a specialist there. But we will go and work with the children themselves, because from a child, what a child says, you can identify what kind of situations they're going through just by the things they say. So if you're in a group with a young group of children between 12 to 16 years old, and you're just having general conversation about sexual abuse, drug, substance abuse, and you're not even bringing mental health, you will be able to see how mentally stable that child is. And I think that the schools need to incorporate in their curriculum mental health elements of training for children, like even just basic stress management, bullying, all these things also lead to drugs. A child that is being bullied would definitely find a way to get out of it. It may be that they would start with substance abuse. It may be that they start cutting themselves. These are all parts of mental health. Someone who cuts themselves to relieve pain, that self-infliction, it's part of mental health. And we have a lot of people doing this in Nigeria, but again, like doctor said, it's been underreported. It's only when somebody has died that we know that there's a problem. They've gone to jump on the bridge.
Or maybe jump.
Yes, that we start hearing there's a problem. But before they jump on the bridge, behind closed doors, you see them cutting themselves. You see them abusing all sorts of different abuse. And these are the things we need to focus on. Hajia was talking about we have a low, small amount of psychiatrists. We actually have only below 200 psychiatrists in the whole of Nigeria, a country of 180 million. I think that Dr. Samuel can confirm this for you. And it's absolutely appalling to say that a country with so many people, we don't have enough medical professionals to even take up the challenge of what we're going through. And also, I think we should also try and train people before for counseling. There should be counselors in every school. There should be counselors in prisons.
In those days, we used to have,
there should be counselors
in schools.
In prisons. There should be counselors because you can't pick up people for drugs and lock them up and then you think after 3 months they will get better. No, it's just going to get worse. You need to be able to put counselors, maybe not therapists because we're short on therapists in Nigeria, but let's train counselors in different sensitive positions whereby they have someone to talk to, because we in Nigeria, we suffer in silence, and that's what's killing us right now.
Oh, well, Rhoda, when we talk about all this, the issue of mental health policy comes to mind. I think Samuel will want to address this because we're in a country, by 2007, World Health Organization was talking about 14 million Nigerians, being identified in the area of mental health challenge. By 2017, I believe that number must have, gone up. And with just experts ranging to about 130, I don't know. What do you think about having a national policy, health policy that will address this challenge, and the institutions creating room to train more experts?
Well, that would be very nice. I mean, having more experts come on board, it will be, if scholarships can even be made available, because this is a very huge challenge and the hands we have in the fields are quite inadequate. We've been working on mental health policy. I'm not sure if that has been consented to, because we've been working on that with the National Assembly. I don't know the level to which it is now, if it has been passed. But that tells you the lack of seriousness we are placing on mental health issue. Is quite huge, but unfortunately, because it's not something that will lead to death immediately. You have mental health, you die. It's not something of that nature. We just shy away from it. But like I said initially, the burden of care is quite huge. The reason why, and it's throw a lot of people into a poverty trap, into a cycle of poverty. So most of the time, the high in social status, the high social class, they are a bit able to afford treatment, so it's not something that they would want to really put more pressure on. But like I say, it's quite a huge burden, and it's quite unfortunate that we are at where we are, even realizing this fact. To quickly answer, make comment on one of the issues that was raised initially. You see, when we talk about substance use, large proportion of people who use substance are using substance to cope with certain situations. We have people who use substance because they have mental health condition. Somebody use stimulant because he's feeling depressed. Somebody use depressant because he's always hyperactive, he's always very busy in the office and all that, so he wants to sleep, he wants to relax, he wants to just feel calm, and then he goes and then start taking all sort of depressant like syrups and all that. So there are certain individuals that actually use substance as a coping mechanism. You know, that must be very clear so that we don't look at the people who use substance and start criminalizing them. They need help, just like the NDLEA officer just said. They need help. And we need to also let them know that this coping mechanism they are using is actually throwing them, is giving them immediate relief, but is costing them much more. You know, costing them much more after the immediate relief they get. So back to your question, yes, we actually need training facilities. We actually need more hands. We need more policy to guide mental health treatment. You know, at what stage can we say an individual who has mental health treatment will not be sacked from his job? You know, confidentiality issues also come into play. There are individuals who will tell you that they want medical report after treatment, but they don't want the condition to be made mention. Of course, the reasons are very clear, which is quite understandable. Because once you state it, they start looking at you. Promotion you will not get. Training you will not get. You will just be there. That is if they even allow you to be there. You know. So yes, like I totally agree with that. We need mental health policy. We've been working on that, and we need more hands. It's quite inadequate. We have training facilities. Lack of awareness is actually one of the reasons why people don't access these training facilities. So we need more hands. We need more people on board on that.
Well, Adekunle Jinadu, we've got tweets coming in from Nigerians who are actually, of course, sending in their comments via Twitter handle at NTA GMN. The very first tweet we have is from Dele Jackson Solomon. He said, mental illness is one of the major contributors to disease burden globally. It is the 6th largest burden worldwide. There's a need to combat it.
And we also have from Engineer Abdullahi is talking about the rate at which public officers steal public funds cannot be devoid of mental health.
Otega Osemude says federal government should be able to bring those that are in charge of mental health centers around the world to justice. Nigeria has a lot of mental issues.
And Festus Akimboye says 1 in 4 of us will have a mental illness at some point in our lifetime and shouldn't conclude mental illness is caused by drug abuse.
And Dele Jackson also tweets again, says government has done so much in the area of primary health care, HIV, that's HIV AIDS. Much needs to be done in the areas of psychiatry and mental health.
And Otega also writes here, the federal government should be able to bring those that are in charge of the mental health centers around Nigeria to justice. Nigerians with mental health, he stopped there.
And Austin Edu Poco, he tweeted, he said, with all that is happening in Nigeria today, we have to examine our heads. $50 million cash stored in flats, it's an abnormal behavior.
And Dele Jackson Solomon writes that government had done much in the area of primary health care and HIV and AIDS. Much is yet to be done in the areas of psychiatry, mental health.
Sunny Michael Omokoji tweets, in this area of change, what is the specific policy of government towards mental disorder in Nigeria?
And Tunde Mano writes that smoking should be completely and effectively banned in Nigeria, and mental illness will be substantially reduced.
Yeah. And finally, Festus Akimboyewa tweets, the mental health challenges facing Nigeria should be addressed forthwith, and we should stop reinforcing the taboo around mental health. Those are the tweets that we have right now. But then I'd like to get to Hawa, that's Hadeja. Let's look at it. When you first came into the studio, and Cliff, so I said, oh, women, you know, we have at least 3 women on the set this morning. Is it that they don't suffer mental disorder, you know, as much as men?
Or they're better disposed.
Of course, and I said women are even more disposed to men because from family, children, work, stress, you know, and all of that. Let's look at the statistics. We have more women from your interactions. You have more men.
Well, statistically, women and men have about this the same. The only thing is that it would appear that women will cope better with mental illness because women talk. It's easier for a woman to tell the next woman her problem, and it's like lifting a load. Men are not more I don't know if it's the culture or that
They're
we're
more
in.
calm,
Not
more
more calm. They're
coordinated.
more
No.
secretive.
They're
It's
more
not a calm thing.
secretive,
They're
yeah.
more. They keep their issues to themselves. So men usually probably would not sit down to their fellow man and say, you know, there's no money in my account kind of conversation, you know. A woman is more likely to probably have that conversation. So it may appear that women have less mental health issues because they are more able to offload some of the things. And like I keep saying, before you get to a chronic stage of mental health, you need to be able to talk, which is why we need more counselors, because the more you talk, the less you're just offloading your burden. So probably that is why, to answer that question.
Aisha will have to come in here because
she deals with parents.
It has become
she deals with parents.
So she deals with parents. More often we have a lot of outbursts and women are accused of nagging and arguing. Little thing they react, they jump to the roof. Does this amount to mental challenge?
Yes, it does. It does really. If as much as I would want to protect women, but it does. Because you find out that you have a lot to tackle at home. And if you have a man who doesn't really correspond with your ways of doing things, then there is a mental illness there.
All right, I'd like to go to our Just Network Center with Samuel Jinadu. From your perspective, from of course being a psychiatrist, you've had to handle a lot of these issues. Do you have more women, or do you have more men, coming out to say, okay, I'm stressed up, or do you have more women having mental disorders?
Mental health issues have gender coloration to some certain extent. There are certain conditions that you tend to find more women, coming down with, and there are certain conditions that you also find some slight more of men coming down with. I'll give you a typical example. Something like depression. We have more of women coming down with depression than men. It could also be somehow related to their gender roles and gender expectations, okay? So, yes, like I said, there are gender colorations to the expression of mental illness. Generally, it could also be that the men are not reporting. You understand that the men are not reporting. However, even in the typical Nigerian setting, one thing that has been helping us and that has been very, very of advantage to us is the fact that we have a very, collective society. Something happens, you have your family members, you can have your niece come to stay with you, you can have your cousin come around. So we have a collective kind of society. So sometimes we have people around us. It's not like an individualistic society where you're always on your own with all high fence and barbed wire like a prisoner in your own house. So we have this collective society that has helped us to a large extent. However, there are still gender coloration to the expression of mental illness.
Look at the issue of funding, because it's part of the reasons why, some people would say that not so much is allocated to the issue of, mental health in Nigeria. How do we address this so that people can have, access to these services? Because it takes a lot to deal with mental disorder. It takes a lot of money.
I'll give you an example. The burden of care for a disorder like depression, for instance, is much more higher than the burden of care for malaria. When you look at, forget about the mortality rate, but the burden of care, depression have more burden of care than malaria. That tells you that even the family that have an individual with mental health condition, they are thrown to a lot of, they are being pushed to the wall when it comes to financial resources. So yes, and for government institution, treatment has grossly been subsidized. If you go to government institution, comparing it to private, treatment has been grossly subsidized. So I would want to encourage people who have mental health condition or who perceive that they've not been functioning very well to approach treatment, to seek for treatment. Funding if we want to wait for government to do funding, it might take forever. We never can tell. However, we'll keep putting pressure on government to look at this critical sector in our health system to see how they can increase funding. But in absence of that, or while we are waiting for that to happen, we have NGOs like that of AWA that can also come in. You know, hopefully, I believe she will do something about that. That can also come in to see how they can assist people. For instance, the treatment, the medications for mental health conditions, they are quite expensive and very difficult to come by. So even when you prescribe a medication for somebody, the person may go around and not still get it because they are not very common and they are not very cheap. So in terms of treatment, in terms of medication, we can also have NGOs that can subsidize, you know, for people who cannot afford. And even for consultations, they can also come in to subsidize for people, you know, so that the burden of care is not overwhelming, because that can also still throw them back into depression when there's no money to buy it. And then you see people relapsing, because after a while, the treatment for mental health condition can take a long time. You know, imagine somebody earning 50,000 naira in a month, and you are prescribing medication that you spend 30,000 naira for in that same month. So where is the other part of the money that you are going to take care of yourself, transport yourself to work, and do other things? So a lot of people, by the time they start seeing changes, they will just discontinue treatment because they cannot afford it. And that would lead them back to relapse. And the more relapse you have, the more assault you are causing to the brain. So if we can have NGOs that can come in to subsidize treatment while we are putting pressure on government to increase funding on this area of our health sector, it would be very nice. So.
To how they've thrown the ball in your court, you know, talking about funding and the role NGOs could play in that direction, because I know NGOs on their own part go seeking funds, you know, to carry out their own task. How can you include this, you know, to ensure that we have the expected financial leverage to tackle this challenge of mental challenge?
Well, in terms of funding, well, my own personal NGO has been doing a lot with a selection of about 7 other NGOs, and Hajia's NGO PADA is also included. So we have a team called Youth Matters. What we did is that we decided that mental health was obviously underfunded, and we decided to bring together other NGOs to come together to fight the issue together rather than going as an individual. And we approached Federal Ministry of Health, and I must say that the minister has been amazing. He's very supportive in the work we've been doing. He's very passionate about improving the mental health issue. So I think it's not only a government issue. I think also we need to also reach out to international organizations. Like doctor said, mental health now is like malaria, it's like diabetes. So the way we are reaching out for funding for all these other public health issues, we should also make mental health a priority public health issue, so that we can also get funding to subsidize the drugs. I mean, HIV drugs are subsidized, and some are free depending if it's first line or second line. So we should get to a point where we can get international organizations that can subsidize, so someone who is has mental health challenges is not paying enormous amounts to be able to treat themselves. And again, obviously, if a person is treating themselves, then we have reduced one person who is suffering from the issue. Yep. And other organizations are doing, and part of the World Bank Youth Forum, they are also interested in reducing the mental health issue in Nigeria. There are organizations that are now sitting up, but we need more organizations. There are not many of us that are doing this work. We need more organizations to come together. Come and join us rather than trying to do it by yourself, because people in Nigeria just want to do everything by themselves, okay. And then you don't end up achieving a lot.
Let me put it in the right perspective, because I know that National Drug Law Enforcement Agency engage in rehabilitation of some of the addicts, and I know it doesn't cost a little money to do that. How do you cope?
It does, and I'll tell you why. Well, before getting to that, the NGOs, apart from the NGOs, you see, in this country, we are lucky. We have people that are well endowed, either as business people or, let me put it this way, some people that are blessed from their offices. If you go through, let's put it as blessing. I don't want to, use any other term. Yes. there's no problem if you can come out to render a sort of humanitarian services.
Yes.
It do happen in other countries. You don't need to mention your name.
Yeah.
You got now with all this, you have heard what we are tweeted about. Can you imagine if you have removed some part of these things to assist not only mental illness, health-wise, generally? So apart from the NGOs, I think a call should be made also on philanthropists, patriotic citizens, those business people and those blessed by their offices. They can come out and build either more of these psychiatric homes or most of these centers that you can walk in to present your problem, it will be solved. Yeah. I think it won't be out of place. It will be aggressive. Now, back to the question I asked on NDLA. We do, because it's mandatory at every command in the 36 states. We must have a rehabilitation center, but not to treat mental illness.
So what do you do actually?
Yes, I'll tell you, we rehabilitate all these drug addicts, going by the name National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. But at the cost of it, we come and also discover, we used to discover most of this is actually a mental issue. So we do a sort of liaison with all the psychiatric homes around the city, like where I'm commanding. We have the Dawanau Psychiatric Hospital. And I was wondering when we are saying how many men or women are more. I could have commented on that. But now, see, what we do, we render counseling and rehabilitation services, but not treating mental issues. So when we have a mental case, we take it to the expert. The matter is why from the beginning of this...
Do you have experts in that direction?
Yes, we don't have in NDLA, but we do have in most of the psychiatric homes. We liaise. Like in a week, we meet twice, 3 times. Look, when you come, you know, it's not only a counselor of NDL that will say, okay, let me treat. No, you have to go through some medical procedures. When you come, it's not for me to know that, look, this man is into codeine or cannabis in him or cocaine. No. We work with some medical doctors as well. They'll have to test you to know what kind of drugs do you abuse first. Okay. What level is it in your body? Okay. What are the detoxification process? All this, we don't do it as for me, I'm a sociologist. You got what I mean? So I'm more into rehabilitation, but we have to know what actual drugs you take and what is the level in your body. Then that will determine how many days you have to be with us. And when you're with us, we don't just lock you like what Aisha said, for 3 months you go, no. You go into a lot of process, medically, psychologically. We learn also with a lot of this psychology, as I told you. Then also you do some sports. If you are a Christian, also you have to do some religious activities. If you are Muslim, you have to do some, at least for you to come back home. Yeah. So we do a lot of it, but I am telling you, the underlying factor is there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you want to still comment there. I wanted to go to Samuel because we have... Okay.
Can I just quickly say that
go ahead,
the fact is that corporate organizations in Nigeria, philanthropists in Nigeria, they would rather fund a program surrounding a public health issue with a child than mental health, being that issues with children are more sensitive. Oh, that's so sweet. You know, it has more emotional connotation than to support a program with mental health. We're having serious issues with funding, even with this mental health issue. We've been trying to do projects nationally. We've been endorsed by all the ministries that are involved in our program. But funding, people don't want to fund mental health. So there's even stigma with the funding as well in terms of mental health. So we're having issues.
So we're going back to what you said.
Aisha, I know you've been
it's like dealing with parents.
Because you've been dealing with parents. What is the disposition of parents and possibly other interest groups, you know, towards funding or addressing this challenge?
Issues.
I think the approach is the problem. If we can really package ourselves very well, and approach is good, like Hawa is doing, I would like to encourage her more to go into schools where you can meet up the children. Through them, you can meet up the parents. They will be really interested. But if you are looking for a government figure to fund you, it's very difficult.
But then we get those government figures, or would we say philanthropies, just as Hawa said, to fund, you know, issues of children, maternal mortality and all of that. But why is it that, you know, we have people, you see people, I'm going to build a healthcare center in my village and it's just, you know, normal. Nobody's, oh, I'm going to build a mental health institution.
But
why?
they don't know. That's the truth about it. They need to be aware. That's the awareness she's making. People don't wake up and think they even have a mental issues. Like I can wake up this morning and be stressed out by a house girl. You understand? And it's not my problem. She created it and I react to it. It's not all by taking drugs also you have mental illness. But the problem is it's not our priority now. So you think they know. They don't know. It's through the awareness campaign that they will get to know that this and education. A lot of it is going on. This is mental situation.
I was said they know.
All right, let's get to let's get to Samuel Jinedu, who's in Jones. Of course, Samuel, you can listen to us here. We seem to differ in terms of why there is a stigma in terms of even funding. Some people find it difficult to say, oh, there's a mental health institution in my locality, let alone even getting to fund it. So how do we deal with this? How do we get more people to be more enlightened in terms of funding, even in terms of seeking treatment and having access to these treatments?
When you talk about stigma, I have my own share of it. I mean, I walk into a training center and I introduce myself as a psychologist, and everybody look at me, oh, wow, be careful what you say. People stigmatize even the professionals that are treating, that are managing some of this challenge. So, and stigma usually are on account of poor information. When somebody doesn't know some certain things. One of the reasons why we have stigma in Nigeria, especially surrounding mental illness, is because of the low knowledge. I'll give you another example. Maybe during the colonial period, before the colonial period, we have things like Ebola, things like very serious physical health issues that our forefathers and our ancestors did not understand. And what did they do? They take it as a spiritual issue. They do sacrifice to appease gods and all that. So because they don't understand the challenge, they spiritualize it to get a spiritual solution. So when people are faced with an ambiguous situation, the only thing that can be done for them is to just look at what other explanation, spiritualizing it. So stigma is basically on account of information. If an individual understands the pathway, the treatment pathway, to a large extent, stigma will reduce. So, like what we are doing here, raising awareness, discussing about it, and letting people know that it's not a crime. If it's not a crime for me to have malaria, then it's not a crime for me to have depression. If it's not a crime for me to have fever, then it's not a crime for somebody else to have bipolar. So, if all this is meant and is brought to the knowledge of even people, decision makers and authority figures, their approval and their consent is going to go a long way, even to the way people behind them or people below them they are going to express their feeling about what they are passing through. Stigma also goes in terms of funding. Most people don't want to fund a mental health condition. Truth be told, mental health condition, the funding part can be a bit cumbersome. Like I said, some people can be in treatment for like 6 years. Some people can be even in treatment for life, depending on the rate of relapse. But you can also do your own bit to alleviate some of these conditions. If you can help somebody who has diabetes, if you can pay for treatment for that person, you can also pay for somebody's treatment who have depression or who have certain health condition. Don't wear black clothes to go and mourn the person when he's dead, when you had opportunity to, avoid that. There are certain avoidable things that we can do, especially as it relates to mental health. It can be very huge. The funding can be very huge, but, people can come on board, and then let's see how far we can go with that.
The challenge is a huge one. Even the World Health Organization report on mental health system in Nigeria point to the fact that only 33% of patients, have access to psychotropic medicines. And of course, in the area of insurance, we just have a short-term coverage of that, essentially in the area of affective mental disorder. But one wonders, if we have better funding, can we completely, somebody that is affected, be healed completely without elements of, coming back to it?
I would answer the question in two ways, yes and no. Depending on the rate of relapse, like I say, an individual can manage the condition. I have clients that works in bank, that work in different places that if you see them, you would never know that this person have mental health issue because they've managed it, they've been on medication, they've managed it very well that on a normal, you don't even know what is going on. So you wouldn't even understand that this person is. So yes, it can be managed to the barest minimum. It can be managed to the level where symptoms is not interfering, where the person is not relapsing, the person has, and at some certain point, the person will even be like on what we call drug holiday, where the person takes 1 day in, 1 day out, and like that, and like that. So the person can manage it to that level where it is not interfering at all. And the person can even be off medication at some certain point. But by the time we have cases of frequent relapse, it becomes complicated. It becomes complicated because, like I say, the more relapse you have, the more you are assaulting the brain. And to some certain people, they have what we refer to as residual symptoms. Symptoms that would just be there. Even when the person is fully functional, you will still see some certain element because the person has been in and out, in and out, in and out, and the treatment has not been consistent. And so we need to look at those things that will make treatment not to be consistent, among which is funding. So if funding is adequate, a lot of people would be very consistent on their treatment, and the more consistent they are, the more likelihood that they will do very well. I mean, we have great inventors who have managed depression and are out of it, and they've done very well continuously for the rest of their life without anybody, and they are proud to say, yes, I managed this condition, but now I'm doing okay. You understand? So yes, we can have such a situation where people are very stable, and where people are very stable, and where people are...
Clinical psychologist, we thank you so much for your perspective to this discussion on contemporary mental health challenges in Nigeria. Thank you for being our guest. Going to reaction of Nigerians still pouring in through our Twitter handle, NTA GMN, on this very discussion. Brother, we have...
This one, the very first one is from Lamidi Benga Samuel. He says, another issue is to look at the increase in the use of hard drugs or abuse of drugs in private tertiary institutions in our country.
And Ronke Eleinju Ege, rise from secondary school level psychiatric evaluation should be introduced for pupils up till tertiary level. It will go a long way.
And Festus Akimboyewa tweets, Nigeria should develop community mental health services to enhance training of mental health workers and provide access to mental health care.
And JP Uzishi's rise, I notice I have depression but never consult any doctor. I'm using a self-therapy and it's working for me. Must I see a doctor?
All right, I'm sure that, of course, from the program, you would know that, of course, you definitely you need to see a doctor before it graduates to something else. Don Martin's tweets, federal government should embark on drug sensitization at universities. The way undergraduates resort to drugs like tramadol and Refnol is alarming.
And Chris Simon rise, centers for disease control and prevention should enlighten the masses on the importance of sound and mental health, especially among youth. And
Ronke Andrew tweeted, said, for the NDLEA, how well do they destroy the drugs from peddlers? Does it go back into the society? Are these drugs all over?
And Festus rise again. We are still ignorant as a nation on mental health. We should start to promote good mental health in our workplaces, schools, and communities. Now you've had all these comments. Let's just get your brief reaction to this.
Okay, briefly on the issue of rising trend of drug abuse in universities, yes, that is true, but at the same time, very, very relative. Now, what NDLA is doing is that we have what is called drug-free clubs in almost all Nigerian universities, now mandatory. That in every university we must have a drug-free club involving students and their guidance teachers. And I think even last week I have just launched one in order of College of Education at Bichi.
Yeah.
That is that one. Then two, people are asking, what do we do with these drugs when we arrest and confiscate them? You see, luckily, NDLA, after prosecution, when we secure conviction, these drugs, we don't even just say, okay, we have a court order, we're going to destroy them. No. Now there's an additional procedure. It's mandatory that before destruction, a high court must be there, stakeholders must be there, like all the stakeholders. And when they come, traditionally now, we don't even say, okay, this is the ban and destroy it. Okay. We make sure you pick one They tested there before destruction.
All right.
Yes, at least that's what we do.
Hamza Umar,
Yes.
Commander, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA Kano. Want to thank you for your insight on the program this morning. And also, I wish we had more time, of course, would have, but then that's where we have to call it a day with you guys. I would like to thank Hawa Abbas Adeja. She is the founder, Silver Lining Initiative. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. And finally, I'd like to thank Aisha Aliyu Tafida, founder, project coordinator, Parents Against Drug Abuse Initiative, PADA, in partnership with the UNODC, a community intervention and network on drugs. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah, welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your perspective to this very conversation. And we move on now to our segment as we take a break.
Kidney and liver issues are on the rise. Why?
This is monstrous. It's even more monstrous.
Charlatans peddle drugs on the streets as if it is pure water. Why?
I was not new.
Enterprise is for money, not assured and quality service. Why?
My dear sweet professor, am I trying to do so?
Oh, yes.
Episode 10, Season 3 of your rib-cracking comedy. Professor John Bull takes a swipe at the scourge of substandard goods in our society.
Fake suppliers of products must be brought to justice before they create a calamitous atrocity in our community.
Keep a date with us and laugh like never before.
Electric bomb!
Showing at 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday on NTA Network International and Star Times.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
To the outer framers, the hat tippers, the fringe growers, you don't need to hide anymore. Try Dettol Even Tone. It cleans and helps to reduce the appearance of blemishes caused by oil, dirt, and germs, giving your skin a healthy feel for an even better you. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
NTA Television College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, has maintained her reputation of putting together courses that are highly relevant to manpower needs of the broadcast industry. The college has put together 3 core courses for 4 weeks on computer networking for television for the engineers in the broadcast industry. Date 17th April to 12th May 2017. Registration fee 80,000 Naira with accommodation. Also, a 4 weeks course on English grammar and pronunciation for broadcasters, presenters, scriptwriters, news editors, journalists, and master compares. Date 22nd May to 16th June 2017. Registration fee 80,000 Naira with accommodation. TV College also has a 4 weeks course on specialized reporting to cater for those that want to learn the skills of reporting from judiciary, crime, conflict zones, environment, business, natural disasters, politics, and health. The course will teach you the ways to write and handle stories with peculiar situations. Registration fee 80,000 Naira with accommodation. Date 19th June to 14th July 2017. Venue of all courses will take place at NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, contact us on 0806 980 9807 0703 660 7155 or email us at ntacollege@gmail.com. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you can be.
Cadbury Bournvita now comes in an attractive new 500-gram refill pack. Simply open and reseal after use to retain the chocolatey and creamy taste. Cadbury Bournvita. Prepare to win.